Welcome to Next Level Play Therapy, a weekly podcast dedicated to supporting the next generation of child and adolescent therapists to provide exceptional play therapy services. We'll explore all things play therapy to elevate your work with children and adolescents using the therapeutic powers of play. I'll discuss practical tips and ideas so you can provide a transformative experience for your young clients and make a real difference in their lives. So get ready to take your play therapy skills to the next level and make a lasting impact in the lives of children, adolescents, and families. Hey there, welcome everyone. Welcome to this episode of Next Level Play Therapy. And I am so excited. This week we have Tammi Van Hollander, and we're going to talk about what I think is a really popular kind of way to work with children in play therapy, and that is bibliotherapy. I also find that people kind of know what it is. And so today we're going to talk about what is bibliotherapy and Tammy's new book that she's got coming out. It's going to be on the shelves any day now, that really uses more of a kind of a neurobiology and attachment approach and looking at different ways you can use play therapy, bibliotherapy with play therapy and specific resources. I think she does a really great job of helping you step by step know what to do so that you have some really good ways to really help your clients heal using play therapy. So that is what we are going to discuss today. I am Cathi Spooner, licensed clinical social worker and registered play therapist. If any of you if you want to join the conversation, please feel free to post a comment. We'd love to know who's here watching the live stream, where you're from, what population you work with. Are you using bibliotherapy? Do you have some favorite books that you're using? The only thing that we ask is that you not post information about clients or ask questions about specific clients, because it is a public format and we want to maintain some privacy. So with that, I'm going to let Tammi go ahead. If you want to say a couple of things about yourself, introduce yourself, and then we'll get started.
Okay, Cathi, thanks so much for inviting me to be here to talk about a topic that I'm just so passionate about. So I am a licensed clinical social worker and a registered play therapy supervisor. I have been a play therapist for almost 25 years. This is my passion. Sandtray is my passion. I was fortunate enough to do a Sandtray TEDx talk in October. I have a group practice, mainline play therapy, right outside of Philadelphia. And when I was trying to expand the practice, I was looking for many play therapists, and it was really difficult to find. So it really became an expressive therapy center. And I have art therapists and dance and movement therapists and music therapists. And it's a beautiful way, especially within supervision, how we can share all of our knowledge, because it was very important, if I am going to expand the practice, that expressive arts, expressive therapies, those who understand the bottom-up approach, the neurobiology, the attachment piece, and that I wasn't going to bring into the practice more of a top-down approach and a CBT type of approach, because it's just not within the realm of the work that I do. And I really wanted it to all be congruent and together. So that's a little bit about me and my practice. And maybe, Cathi, I can just tell you a little bit the story of how I got introduced to bibliotherapy and how I got introduced.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
because I am guessing those of you who use books and those of you who are play therapists and who have gone to any Association for Play Therapy conferences, you probably have had the same introduction that I have had. So I was trained at the Family and Play Therapy Center in Philadelphia, very strictly in client-centered play therapy. And in client-centered play therapy, books were not introduced. Books were not seen as client-centered. And I had gone to my first Association for Play Therapy conference, and I was at the Self-Esteem Shop. And
I spend way too much money there all the time. That place is amazing.
They are so wonderful. And at that time, it was Dee Dee Gruenberg, who
Yep.
many of us who have been around know Dee
Yep.
Dee. We love Dee Dee. And everybody would come up to Dee Dee and they'd say, what's a book for this? And what's a book for that? And Dee Dee would pull a book and she would read it as if you were her grandchild or her client. And she read it with such a zest and you would just melt. And I would be like, wow, this is really powerful stuff. And I started buying books and creating this therapeutic library and recognizing how I can still have a client-centered foundation and look at the beauty and the similarities of using books and using play therapy, of creating that safe psychological distance, creating that attunement, creating that beautiful attachment, and how we can use books both to settle a child or if they're first needing something more sensory and to get them then back into that ventral, what are the different ways? And I started using it so much books within telehealth during the pandemic as well.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people were trying to figure out ways to provide play therapy, and bibliotherapy was a really good way to be able to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, my little 3 and 4-year-olds, they would be bouncing off the walls and it would be so hard for them to be online. So we all know, those of us who had to do it, we had to be creative and they didn't have to sit and they could move around. But when these kiddos would come and they would share their favorite book and they would have it online and I would share my favorite book, and this beautiful, right? Polyvagal, games of reciprocity, us reading, you read a page, I read a page, that back and forth, that attunement, that beautiful space of creating safety and being together. And so I think that sometimes people think that when using books, that it often is a very top-down approach. And we do have books
that's a really good point. Yeah.
And we do have books that provide psychoeducation, which are wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful to have psychoeducation books on trauma, on the brain, on all of those pieces. But it's also wonderful to have books that create these stories where children can identify with the characters, that they no longer feel alone. And then within the play therapy process, they can expand on these characters. They can create their own ending. They can create their own character. And it just becomes, these books become part of their story. And that's what's so beautiful about it as well, that they're no longer alone with whatever they're struggling with.
Yeah, and I actually use a lot of the reasons you just said. Because I like doing attachment focused family play therapy, and when I have the parents and the kids in there, I use bibliotherapy all the time and have the kids and the parents together, and they're kind of snuggled while the parents are reading the book. Yeah, I think that whole attachment piece that you were talking about is really important, because I don't think we always think about that, because we think top down, not that bottom up. Yeah, that's a really great point.
Yeah. So, I mean, there really is this this beautiful connection when it comes to books. I mean, I have my therapeutic library, and since I am more client-centered, many of the books are just out, and it may even be the child may even pick the book, and within it, I mean, Cathi, you and I have been doing this a long time, and when you've been doing it as long as we have been doing it, you don't often need an agenda. Like a child can almost come up with any book, and we can creatively just kind of prompt. I feel like although I train all over and I do these pieces and I may teach interventions, but I don't really believe that they're interventions. I believe that they're a prompt. So a question that I will often get is, well, what happens if my client doesn't like books? And the simple answer is don't use them. Right? Or it's like, oh, well, I have this book. Let me just tell you what it's about. And you can share it. And if it's too long, you shorten it. And
Right.
it's too short, you make it longer. So there's so many ways that we can do it together. I mean, one of my favorite things that I just yesterday, I have this little girl who loves books and loves nature. And I had my big Yogi Bow, which is this big bean bag. If none of you know it, they're awesome. And we took a big blanket and we sat under a tree, and I have a beautiful nature space. And we just brought out the books and we, cuddled up and with a parent, and they cuddled up and just being in nature and having all of the sensory elements as well, while just being able to share and to read. It was just so beautiful. So I love being able to also, if you're able to, and if you have releases, to be able to be outside. It's a great way to incorporate nature and just sitting under a tree.
Yeah, and that whole idea, I think, one of the things I talk to people all the time about as well when I'm doing consultation is never, and this to me is the attachment component, right? And that interpersonal neurobiology piece of attunement through that attachment relationship. Don't ever underestimate the power of presence and that time of being fully seen and heard by just kind of hanging out. So, as you were talking about reading the books and being together, and it's more about just the cognitive aspect of it, it's that whole relational aspect of it when we are like Daniel Siegel talks about those resonant circuits, right? We're like resonating physiologically even through that calm and regulated and connected and safe space. And that in and of itself is healing, which is why I think child-centered play therapy works so well, is because it's all about the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And we bring that into the different models too, different play therapy models. That therapeutic relationship is the core, and then add. I mean, how many of us? I don't know. I don't know about you, but when I was little, I consumed books. I was just like reading all the time. How many of us kind of have experiences of snuggling up with a good book and being lost in a good book, and how just amazing that is, and then to have that in using it therapeutically in play therapy is
Absolutely.
really amazing.
And
Yeah.
I think, when we're talking about connection and we're talking about safe spaces, right? We're having kids and we're seeing kids with trauma. There's cues of danger everywhere. And being able to recognize, right, all of the pieces, our own tone, how bright the lights are. I mean, you will see, if anybody had a snapshot into my playroom, the amount of fort making and little lighted candles or flashlights where we're actually reading the books and
that's
turning
so cool.
and creating these spaces and then going in and reading the book and having the parent go in to read the book. So recognizing that there's so many ways that we can creatively use it. When we think of developmental bibliotherapy is often used in the school, and it is very directive and it is psychoeducational. And then we have the therapeutic bibliotherapy that is used within a therapy setting, and often there is a very directive intention for it. But if we expand and we do this play-based bibliotherapy, it's taking the book, and sometimes the book may be directive. You may have a book in mind, or it may not be. And how are we still trusting the process, following the child's lead? When we have a child coming into the office as client-centered, right? We have a child who may be really bouncy. So we're going to even when they're bouncy, we may find a book that has some activities that are creating movement, and our tone and our inflection, right, is going to be that way. We have a child who's a little more quiet. We're going to be a little more quiet, just like we do it in play therapy. Even the little parts of the books where it asks a little question, we may even use our little hand technique. What do you think of that? Right? We can incorporate those different pieces to create that beautiful safety, and know that this is their space, and that in no way are we trying to push a child to ever do what they want. It is there for the beauty to create more connection, to create more safety, to create more of an understanding. But every child is different, and we have to know our child. I think that often when we hear of interventions or different types of things, I have to say, within any of the trainings that I do, I'm like, I've shared so many things. I don't want you to just go out and go down the list. Or when I'm teaching a sand tray training of processing questions, don't just go down the list. As we do this work, it becomes so much more intuitive. And I think a really important part, what also made me love books so much, was I was trained in first play with Janet Courtney and kinesthetic storytelling. So I have a book called Casey's Greatness Wings, Teaching Mindfulness Connection to Children. And there's several of us play therapists who have kinesthetic storytelling books. And these books are so beautiful because as you're reading the book, the parent is doing the book on the child's back. So it's amazing multi-sensory experience. And while the parent does it on the child's back, the child could either be doing it on a stuffed animal, they could be doing it on the sand tray, they could be doing it with paper and drawing, and it's amazing. And once you introduce one kinesthetic storytelling book, parents are like, wow, we could do these backstories with any book. And so I have to give a shout out to Janet Courtney and her work for really introducing me to just the power of kinesthetic storytelling and recognizing it's just notching up. It's notching up that attachment piece while giving the therapeutic power of touch, while always asking permission, while always making touch is okay, making sure touch is okay, to create more of those cues of safety.
That's awesome. I never even thought about that. That's a great idea, especially any age kid, really, that whole idea of touch and connection and, safety and going at their pace, even at kids who are a little more standoffish, or maybe they don't do the sensory very well. There's still a way you can do it safely to connect with them that way too. Yeah. So I was wondering, so if you what are some strategies that you typically suggest? And I know in your book, which for any of you watching, either on the live stream or on the replay. So the replays will usually populate right after the broadcast ends. But for any of you listening to the podcast, then you won't have the visual. But if you look in the description, you'll see the name of Tammi's book. And also at the end, we'll kind of post some information in the comments where you can find things. And your book is coming out next week, I think, right? It's going to hit the shelves any day now.
July 30th, but through Pessy, it's already hit. Self-Esteem Shop said they got them early, and
nice.
A few people who've ordered on Amazon have gotten them early. So
nice. That's awesome.
They should be coming out. Yep.
So I think in your book you talk a lot about different strategies to use, and so I was thinking, like, are there any specific kind of strategies that you like to use, or things to think about, like top things to think about when you're thinking about using bibliotherapy?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important that you always have to preview the book. Never just have a book and you don't know about it. I have within my therapeutic library, and I think maybe I'll post it again. It may be on my Instagram. I have these cardboard. I guess they're for files. So I have them listed within my library. So I'll have like bullying and friendship, and I will have worry and anxiety. And so some of these different pieces, and then more of the trauma ones I have in a separate spot, but inclusivity, all of those pieces are all within the therapeutic library. So I think one, it's really important to really know the book. Not be surprised by anything, really know your audience. Like for some books on grief, they may talk about heaven, and that may not be congruent to what somebody's religious beliefs are. We have to really recognize and read the book and understand the entire family, because a certain book, a child may really love it, but the parent may feel unsafe in some way. And I'll often say to a parent, if I'm with a child or in the playroom, I will first have the parent preview the book and say, we'll read it next week, because I just want to make sure that they feel confident and they know the book. And so I think having a parent preview it can also be really helpful. You also want to be aware of the length of time, of how long is the book going to take. And if you have a specific intervention and activity in mind, the book may take so much time, and then you're going to rush the activity.
Yeah.
So just being aware of your time. In my training with Dottie Higgins-Klein, the setup that I had learned was that we would do a check-in, and I was very fortunate to have a talk time room and a client-centered room. So when my families come in, we first do a check-in, and that check-in is often play-based. We may do flip-flop feelings, or we may read a book. So it works out really beautifully with how I do my play therapy sessions, because we have this reality time where then we can read, we can check in, and often within the work I'm doing, I'm always celebrating the strengths. I'm always celebrating what is going right. I'm an advanced nurtured heart approach trainer, and working on kids' greatness and being I Can Kids is one of my priorities. So we'll do that. And then when they go into the playroom, it's still client-centered, but we're bridging the book if they want to, while even the activities are still very much implementing in terms of that client-centered feel.
Well, that's a nice way to do kind of that integrated approach where you're doing the directive and integrating in the child-centered. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's hard. Not everybody's able to have two separate rooms
Right.
and to be able to do it. But, and I think another really important piece is how therapeutic these children's books are for parents.
Oh, that's a really good point. I never even thought about that.
And I will often give these children's books to parents in the waiting room to read just for themselves and
Oh,
for their
good
own
idea.
psychoeducation, for their own way to hold space. I mean, so many therapeutic books in the back have a lot of ideas for teachers, for
Oh, yeah. What a
parents,
great idea.
and being able to do it. But one book that is actually the first book that I talk about in the Bibliotherapy toolbox, and I did a bibliotherapy. I spoke at the Play Therapy Summit at PESI on bibliotherapy. And my favorite book that I give to parents is The Rabbit Listened. Do you know The Rabbit
I
Listened?
don't know that one.
Oh, by Corey Deerfield. So if you were to ask me one book for
Oh,
everybody
I
to have,
have to look it up now.
and it is such a beautiful book. So I have this big stuffed animal rabbit. So the rabbit is my co-therapist. And in this book, the child Corey gets upset and knocks down these blocks, and the all these different animals come, and the different animals come in and they tell Corey how to react. So the hyena wants to laugh about it, and the lion wants to roar about it, and one wants to yell about it, and one wants to stomp about it, and they all tell the child how to react to the blocks falling down. And the whole time there's this little rabbit in the back, and the rabbit comes over and cuddles up next to Corey and just listens. And as the rabbit listens, then Corey is able to yell about it or cry about it and stomp about it. But it wasn't until the rabbit was just there, the rabbit's presence and holding space, that then Corey was able to express Corey's self however Corey could. And so I give this book to parents, and they're like, I need this. They just need to hold that space to listen. And one of the interventions in this book is, which of these animals are your parent? Which of these animals are your teacher when you're
Mm.
feeling upset, and how they can relate to these animals, and that it doesn't work for them. And then how we can share that with the parents, how we could share it with the teachers, how we could share it with the different adults in the child's life, grandparents, caretakers, of your child needs you to be the rabbit. So just a beautiful way that we don't have to go through the list of all the behavioral pieces of how are we teaching attunement and connection to parents, and creating these safe spaces with these beautiful children's books.
That's awesome. What's the name of that book again? I feel like we're all going to be looking.
Yeah, the rabbit listened.
The Rabbit Listens. That's a really, as you were saying that, I was thinking, what a great way to help parents understand co-regulation. You can use that as a way to, give them some visuals and kind of make those connections about co-regulation. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great idea.
Yeah, and yeah, so I mean, there are so many, and I think, some of the things people will have asked who've already even received the book, in terms of, wow, these are a lot of books, because it basically goes through, I've been for years, everybody will ask me, I get emails and calls of, what's the best book on divorce? What's the best book on trauma? What's the best book, on any of inclusivity? And I've had this list for years. So here, and that's why I really hope it's a really great resource, is for schools and for guidance
Mhm.
counselors, that whatever the situation is, we can look, and here are some ideas of some books. And there's books specifically with interventions, then there's other resources of books, and then what materials are really recommended for them and ways that we're able to have them in the playroom. And what I'll often say is that that book may work, but you may have a book on the same subject that will work really well, will work fine as well. And another,
Mhm.
although it's really important to support the authors, in no way am I getting any type of compensation for any of these books in here. And there are so
Mm.
many amazing books. I mean, there's going to have to be a second edition, a third edition. I mean, there are so many amazing books that I haven't even been close to touching it. So you find the books that you love and you could implement any of these interventions. And if you can't buy all the books and you want to preview the books, many of the books are available on YouTube. And you could look at it on YouTube, and especially if you're doing telehealth, and be able to read it to them. But I am very supportive of, it's different than holding the book and having that therapeutic library, but it is expensive and it is hard to buy all of the books. So there are many different creative ways that you can still be able to use this as a resource.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I forgot about that, they're on YouTube. So that's a really great way to, like you said, kind of preview it and see. But also, I think teletherapy is kind of here to stay, which is nice in a lot of ways. It's got its pros and cons to it. And if you're using it, being able to do bibliotherapy on your teletherapy using YouTube in a way that brings the book a little bit more to life and adds that connection. That's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I am so I have to talk one more time about this book because I am beyond honored of the contributors. I mean,
Oh,
we have
yeah.
there's over 100 interventions, close to 60 contributors of all of our play therapy people. We have Jody Mullen, Robert Jason Grant, Paris Goodyear Brown, Jess Stone, Clara Mellentine. We have, yeah, just everybody who is in here. And basically the contributors who came in here, Dana Weiss, who did the invisible string workbook.
Oh, I have that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so all the contributors that are in here, basically some are authors like Dara Henderson's book and Jackie Flynn's book. So a lot of them, and some of Paris Goodyear's books, Brown's books are in here, but they're really what they were asked of for this book is what are their favorite books and what are the interventions they've been using for years. And that's what makes it so special. I mean, I read these interventions and they've just been wonderful. And I've been, just using so many of their own interventions. So I'm just Leanna Lowenstein. So, I mean, I could go on and on, but
Yeah.
so I'm just so proud of it and so grateful for Pessy for publishing this book and the contributors of this book and just making it happen. And I just hope it's a wonderful resource.
Well, I think it's going to be a really much needed resource for people's libraries because, like you, a lot of, because we both do a lot of supervising and people are always asking, what's a good book for this, or how can I help my client with this? Do you have any book recommendations? So I think it's going to be an awesome resource, and there are a lot of really good contributors in there that are pretty knowledgeable and sharing that wealth of information and their experiences. And don't we all just have our favorites that we like to use and share with others?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's so funny because right when I got the book, I guess last week, and Monday was my supervision day, and I was doing supervision all day, and I have my supervision groups and then my individual supervision. I love supervision, and I literally through every single one, I had my book out, and I was looking. I'm like, okay, this is for that, and I used it through every supervision because it just, it was such a good resource for me to go back and to have it all in one spot. Because although people ask me, I mean, I forget, I can't remember all the different
Oh,
books.
I know, right? Yeah.
So, Lynn Louise Wonders. So yeah, so many people. Jen Taylor. I could keep going, but anyway. I am very excited about that, and I think I am so excited about it because it is such a story. It's such a connection based book as well, and that's really what I wanted. We have a family member who was reading it for her great grandchild and started reading it, and just she made a joke. She's like, I got so frustrated. They were crying. I didn't know what to do. She's like, but I read the book and I think it saved a life. It was
Oh,
very
that's
cute.
awesome. What a great thing.
Just like the little tiny things that it is not a clinical text. It is just little small things that we can recognize, right? To recognize, there is that a small neuroscience piece. There are these different pieces of how important it is when we create these safe spaces and when we create this attunement, and how we can find these spaces for children to heal, because they're not going to heal if it's not a safe space. And
Right.
it's our own presence that creates that, as
Yeah.
well as the entire environment of our playrooms. That is so important to the work that we do.
Yeah. And I think you and I are both kind of the same about the whole attachment and the impact that has, because I feel like one of the things that I tell new play therapists all the time that I work with, we're all learning. Like we're always, and if you're a play therapist, you're probably always learning, right? And especially in the beginning, when you feel like you're not sure what those skills are and you're not sure how to apply them perfectly all the time, just that therapeutic relationship, that in and of itself can create that healing space for children to begin to reset and look at things different way and change the beliefs they have about themselves. So just even adding some of these resources that you're talking about in terms of books, just having that time where you create that space that's safe and connected, where they feel seen and heard, and you can use story in that process. That in and of itself, we always say in play therapy, and when I was learning a long time ago, it used to irritate me when people say trust the process. I'm like, I don't know what that means. But then I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to trust the process. And for me, that means just lean into being fully present and attuned.
100%.
And the rest will come. And
Yeah.
being able to have that way of integrating story in there gives it, for I think even for experienced all levels, I think all levels can use that that resource of what can I do? Like, we're always looking for things. I don't care how experienced you are. We're always trying to figure out what's.
Yeah, we're all trying to find tools. I think a really important other piece is, if we're kind of looking at a little bit through a client-centered lens, is that of reading a book, that any of the books, the child may go into the playroom and just play out something from the book, and without even any of these prompts that you may, because we all know. I actually have a poem in the very first the first page here that I read in all my trainings, and one of it is, we have no agenda and we quiet their fear without that agenda. So we may have an agenda of, this intervention is going to be perfect for this child.
Right.
This is going to be great. And they're going to go and they're going to do what they do and do their work. And it is going to be beyond powerful.
Yes.
So although we may start with the book and we may have that for one child, they're like, yeah, right. And especially when we have kids who have anxiety, they do better with the top down. They want the tools. They are ready to work. They're perfectionists. They want to please you. They want to do all of those pieces. But, so it's really looking at it. So even if we have it, if we do trust the process and the child picks a book, or we even pick it and they're reading it, and we know this child loves books, and then we're bringing it, it's in their body now. So they've already embodied it. So then when they go into the playroom, what are those pieces? And there's a whole embodiment piece, there's a neurodiversity piece, all within the book as well. So really, how are we able to trust the child of wherever they lead us to, and never get stuck on, we may get excited. We may be like, oh my God, this is exciting. This is awesome. And I'm not like talking down on my book, but we also have to be like, oh, like the kids, we know, like they can do the best stuff. And when we trust that and know that and believe that, it's like, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, for sure. So, how can people get your book? What's a good way to do that? Do you want to? I don't know if you want to show the book again so people have the right title. And I think it's called the Bibliotherapy Toolbox.
And then it says 100+ creative and playful story-based interventions to help kids create safety, overcome challenges, and build resiliency. I even have a little sand tray.
I love sand tray.
Right there. And so you can get it on Pessy, you can get it on Amazon, you could get it at the Self-Esteem Shop, any of those places. But you can all find me at, and maybe you could put some of the links below.
We're going to post those in the comments. My virtual assistant will. So for any of you watching the live stream, we'll put the links in the comments as well.
Yeah. So, I'm Mainline Play Therapy, and then I have my Tammi Van Hollander Instagram page, and Tammy's new Play Therapy and Sand Tray Therapy page, because I got hacked and can't get to my other. You guys may see it, but if anybody, so that was a bit of a mess. So we have all of that if you subscribe to my newsletter. And in September 27th, I'm going to be keynoting at the very first Las Vegas Play Therapy Symposium with Marshall Lyles, Jody Mullen, Robert Jason Grant. I've never been to Vegas, so I'm super excited about that.
Well, and it'll be at the end of September too, so it won't be swelteringly hot. It'll still be warm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that. I have in April, it has not specifically been out, but I'm going to be doing a 5-day sand tray retreat, which has been my dream.
Wow.
With Pessy. I did the 5-day play therapy retreat, and I've been begging for 5 days of sand trays. So that is beautiful and amazing. And I do online sand tray trainings. It's been hard during the summer. I need to kind of figure out what it is, but they're 12 hours and they're normally Thursday and Friday with RPT credits. And I love to do play therapy supervision like you, Cathi. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I stay busy, and I love this work, and just so grateful to be doing what I do.
Well, thank you for being on a guest today, and also sharing the information about your book. Any of you who are interested in working with Tammi or attending any of her trainings, feel free to go over to her website, check those out, check out the links that she has provided. And I think Brill is posting those now as we speak. And in the comments below. So thank you so much.
You're
welcome. So if you guys found this information helpful, please feel free to like it and share it on your social media platforms. And if you're listening on the podcast, I would love to have you write a review, give some feedback. It's always nice to make sure that we are meeting needs in the play therapy community and supporting what I always say, supporting the next generation of play therapists to make a deep and lasting impact in the lives of children and families. So
awesome. Cathi, thank you for all that you do.
All righty. Bye. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Next Level Play Therapy. I hope you found the discussion valuable and gained new insights and ideas to support your work helping children, adolescents, and families heal. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback helps to improve and reach more people who can benefit from this information. Remember, play therapy is a powerful tool for healing and growth. Whether you're a new play therapist or experienced, I encourage you to continue your learning journey to unlock the potential of play in your own work and relationships. If you have any questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on social media and visit my website at Renewing Hearts Play Therapy Training to stay updated on upcoming episodes, trainings, and resources. Thank you once again for listening to Next Level Play Therapy. Until next time, keep playing, learning, and growing.